there. And the Africa they were building was designed to underdevelop Africa so they can continue to exploit your Africa, our Africa. So until the children of Africa at home and abroad come together and do what is right for their Africa, there cannot be a sustainable Africa. So the onus is on us to build the Africa that we want. The challenge has always been, how do we go about it? And then the question to follow that is, why can't we do it? What has been holding us back? In my humble opinion, we are the most hardworking, most intelligent people I know on earth. And yet we seem to spend a lot of our intelligence and energy for other people's benefit. That we are forever workers. We don't own anything. The origin of humanity, the DNA that runs in our veins is the DNA of originality. We are the original human beings. We happen to come from a continent that has everything and anything the world can ever need. We, singularly as Africa, are creating trillions of jobs around the world from our natural resources that are being exploited. It may come as a surprise to you, my brothers and sisters, that with all the natural resources that Africa has, we do not dictate the price of not even one. How disgraceful is that? The question then becomes, how did we get it? And I think for us, in order to strategize on how we are going to take our Africa forward, how we are going to take our Africa to its rightful place on the world stage, how we are going to economically empower ourselves in order to regain our respect. So in order for us to understand how we got here, in order for us to make a difference and strategize in the right spirit, in order to bring the sustainability that Africa needs, in order to regain our respect, we must understand first and foremost, how did we get here?
Yes.
Because how we got here was by design. We didn't just end up here. And allow me to just briefly talk about the situation in Africa prior to 1884. The Portuguese were the first ones to colonize Africa over 700 years ago. For 300 years we were colonized by the Portuguese. And like President of Uganda would like to put it, President Museveni. For 300 years the Portuguese colonized us and we did nothing. We were sleeping like grasshoppers. 300 years later, the other colonizers joined them, which was about 400 years ago. That's the British, the Germans, the French, the Spaniards, the Italians, the Belgians. For another 400 years, we still remained sleeping like grasshoppers. It's been 700 years and counting since the colonizers first came to Africa. It has taken us 700 years, my brothers and sisters, to wake up. As smart as we are, 1884, after they'd been coming to Africa and just taking whatever they could take, they started killing each other. They started fighting each other over how to distribute that which they would have stolen from the Africans. The then Chancellor of Belgium, Bismarck, realizing that they were getting ready to have a European war on the African soil, he decided to call his sidekick, at that time, the King of Belgium, Leopold. and said, let's come together and organize these colonizers. Let's meet in Berlin and organize ourselves so we can effectively loot from these people. Then
you heard a little what Dr. Arikana Chiombori Kwao speaking. The role of making Africa developed is on our hands, we African, by using our resources, our natural resources, and our efforts to develop this Africa we want is on our own hands. So he said that if we want to make Africa great, want to make Africa that we want, this is our role. No one from abroad the continent will come and save us to the Africa we want. We have a lot of agendas as Africans, Agenda 53 and many agendas before Agenda 2063. All these agendas we can achieve by uniting the continent. The aim of Berlin Conference to Africa, and I know many of us, we know that African were divided for the benefits of our former colonies, of our former colonizers. So they divide the continent of Africa for their own interest, not for the interest of African. That's why still today, Africa, we didn't achieve what we need, apart from having a lot of resources. I know everything that we see in the world is from Africa. Airplanes, phones, cars, batteries, and everything that world's using in technologies are from Africa. So we Africans, we have to know that the role of uniting this continent, or the role of making the great continent that we want, is on our hands. Arikana speaking this clearly, that Africans now in the continent and those who are in diaspora, as long as you are black, you are from Africa. Let us unite and found that this continent is our own continent, and let's make this continent to the better that we want. So let us continue listening Dr. Arikana Chiombori Kwao.
Can I repeat that? Yeah. They called each other to come to Berlin, Germany, to organize themselves so they can effectively loot from these monkeys. So it is they met in Berlin. History tells us they were sitting across from a big old map of Africa. While the Africans were sleeping, minding their own business on the continent, they were in Berlin strategizing on how to effectively loot from the Africans. They were also strategizing for yet another reason. They were strategizing to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. So they proceeded to chop up Africa into the tiny little countries that we see today. Into economies that cannot survive on. Economies so small that it's almost ridiculous to call them countries. But it was all by design. History tells us that husband and wife were in bed in Zambia. When they woke up in the morning, the husband was in Zambia and the wife was in Malawi. That's how arbitrary the divisions were. So it wasn't bad enough that they divided us into the tiny little countries. They proceeded to assign these countries to colonizers who spoke different languages for maximum destruction. These were kingdoms. Prior to 1884, we were kingdoms. The countries that you see today in Africa did not exist prior to 1884. Are you with me? Yes. They did not exist. They gave us these little countries. The more powerful the kingdom was, the more countries that came out of it, and the more colonizers with different languages were assigned to them. I often say, if you're driving from Zambia, you are speaking English. Pretty soon you're in Angola, you're speaking Portuguese. Pretty soon you're in Equatorial Guinea, you're speaking Spanish. Then you're in DRC, you're speaking French. You are in Southern Cameroon, you're speaking English. Northern Cameroon, you're speaking French. Next you're in Nigeria, you're speaking English. And the story goes on. These were once same people. They said, give it a generation, they'll never know each other. And so it is, my brothers and sisters. 1884, November to February of 1885, the chopping up of your Africa to cause maximum destruction, the chopping up of Africa to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated was done. Fast forward, 135 years later, and the beat goes on. Nothing has changed. You take a country like Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, 1.2 million people. It has the same sovereignty as China, with 1.3 billion people. But when they go to the world stage for the purposes of trading, they are equals. When they go to the world stage for the purposes of trading, China, with its 1.2 billion people, is equal to Eswatini with 1.2 million people. It's like taking a heavyweight boxer and putting them in the same ring with a lightweight wannabe boxer. And when the wannabe boxer loses, the world says, oh, what's wrong with you? Africa was put on the losing lane by the Berlin Conference. And until that situation is resolved, Africa is going nowhere. Economic growth is based on our ability to trade, on our ability to negotiate on equal footing. Africa cannot be in equal footing with the rest of the world as long as we are negotiating as the individual African countries. So 1963, our Pan-African leaders realizing that the nature of Africa today, of the 55 African countries, is not sustainable. That for Africa to take its rightful place on the world stage, for Africa to regain its respect, for Africa to regain its economic power, Africa must negotiate as one continent, speaking with one voice. Sadly, when they went to Addis Ababa in 1963, they were divided. We had the Casablanca group, who were Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. They wanted African Union now, and Africa for the Africans, at home and abroad. Unfortunately, of the 32 countries that participated, the rest of the countries were the Monrovia group, who were the nationalists. They said, let's go slow. So it is 56 years later, we're still going slow. You see, Israel has called on its children, the Jewish diaspora, to come back home. A Jew may never need to set foot in Israel, but they know Israel is home. And that is what gives them the stability that they need. That reconnection with their roots allows them to flourish wherever they are. Yes. The Indians have done the same thing. The Irish, the Chinese, the Mexicans, they all know where they come from, and they reconnect with their roots. It's only us black people who, for some reason, we are busy running away from our roots. And we wonder why we are like a ship with all sails and no anchor. We're like palm trees, the wind blows this way, here we go. The wind blows that way, here we go. Yes. Because we are refusing to reconnect with our anchor, which is Africa. Until we reconnect with our anchor, until we are anchored, we will continue to be in the wilderness. That has got to change. But you must also realize if in your state of mind, the shackles of the mind, it was also by design. During the Berlin Conference, they also instituted a policy of making black people believe that everything about them was bad and undesirable, and everything about them was better and more desirable. Have you ever wondered who came up with the idea of the color black and the color white? They take the color white, they assign everything beautiful and desirable with the color white. Jesus Christ is white, angels are white, angel food cake is white, you wear white to go to weddings, you wear white for christening, everything wonderful new beginning is white. And then they take a race that's not even white and say, who cares, you're white. So when they raise their children are being born and brought into this world, being told you represent white, and white is wonderful.
So you heard Dr. Arikana Chiombo in full speech, and I appreciate this video credit from Make Africa Great. So you heard what Dr. Arikana Chiombo. Please, as African, let us know your thought in the comment section, because this is the platform where Africans will share thoughts and changing the narrative of Mother Africa. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment on this.